Hi everyone, and welcome to this short webinar on using contracting in coaching and mentoring. I'm Karen, an Associate Coach and Learning Facilitator with Team Boo. As you may already know, Boo Coaching and Consulting helps to create happy and healthy workplaces through coaching, leadership and well-being initiatives. In this session, we're going to have a look at what contracting is, why we do it, how do we go about contracting, and we'll also touch on the Global Code of Ethics. Along with questioning and listening, contracting is one of the core skills and key stages in a coaching and mentoring relationship, and it also forms part of the rapport building stage. So what do we mean by contracting? Well, contracting really helps to clarify the roles of both the coach, mentor, and the coachee and mentee. It really helps create a shared understanding between the coach and coachee or mentor and mentee. Helps to set out the purpose of the sessions and how they're going to be carried out, and also helps create boundaries. And it's really important to contract so that you create the foundations for really successful relationships, and it can prevent misunderstandings from occurring in the future. One of the things you might want to consider before you even start a coaching and mentoring relationship is to have a chemistry session, and this is so that you can decide whether or not you're going to be able to work together. It's called a chemistry session because both parties should feel that the relationship can offer the right personal dynamics and feel so that there's mutual confidence between the two people. Some of the benefits for the client might be that the client feels that they're listened to, that they can connect with the coach or mentor. It's also just a chance to test out how the coach or mentor might deal with some particular scenarios. And it's really a chance to get to understand and get a feel for the coach's style and methods, and also a chance for you to ask questions about experience, the coach's or mentor's experience. And for the coach or mentor, there are some benefits too, and it's a chance for them to understand the areas that the client wants to work on, also to understand how they want the coaching and mentoring to go, and maybe describe something about their working style, and perhaps a chance to listen out for any danger signals. So these could be signs that maybe someone's come into coaching for the wrong reasons. Perhaps they feel under pressure to be coached from their line manager, or there might be some other reasons that aren't appropriate. And for the organisation, it's also a chance for the client to be introduced to a suitable coach or mentor, and assurance for the client that they're confident with their choice of coach or mentor. So why do we need to contract in the first place? Well, the strength of the contracting phase really has a great impact on how effective the relationship is going to be going forwards. It's a really important part of building trust and rapport with the client and really putting them at ease and ensuring that the client is working with the right coach or mentor. And it's also about showing genuine interest in the other person and building a real sense of ease so that the conversation flows really naturally. Depending on the type of coaching and mentoring relationship will vary really in terms of the formality, so whether it's formal or a more informal arrangement. But even in the most informal arrangements, it's best to agree at least some key aspects of how you're going to work together. One of the things that you might want to cover as part of your contracting is to help the client understand in the first place what coaching and mentoring are and what they're not, because there are some misconceptions. So how do we go about contracting? Well, often clients just start by telling their story. Sometimes they just need to explain their challenge out loud to somebody. One of the things you might want to consider is the use of a lifeline tool to help the client reflect on their journey to the point in time when they've come to see you. The partnership will begin when the client starts to talk about a specific issue that they're currently stuck on or an opportunity that they've yet to realise. Often what you need is just really the skills of listening and being curious and just reflecting back for clarity at this stage. Try and get the client to be as specific as possible about their issue. Using empathic reflecting back to show you understand their concerns will help them acknowledge their feelings and also help to show that you demonstrate a real respect for the client and that you've got the capacity and the resources to help them in their situation. One of the things that contracting can really help the client do is to really help them understand that they own the issue or opportunity. It's about testing their willingness to work on themselves and to also test whether or not they're willing to change their own response to the issue. We've shown on the screen some of the really helpful questions at this stage, so you might want to ask them what recurring patterns are present in this situation, which patterns work well and which detract from the efforts, how are you a part of these patterns, how have you responded to the issue, can you imagine a different pattern, how will this help you get to your goal, and how can I be useful to you? These are really quite helpful questions at this stage, and the contracting conversation should be good enough to give both the coach and the client a good sense of how they're going to relate to one another. One of the things at this stage is going to be to help the client work towards some measurable goals and some specific outcomes. One of your roles as a coach or mentor is to help them articulate what these goals are. There are some areas that both parties are going to need to discuss at the contracted stage, and you need to be able to clarify and agree these. So you might find this checklist really helpful. And you can add anything on that you think might also be useful to cover, or if there are any special circumstances. So some of the things you're going to want to cover are: what's the broad aim and purpose of the relationship? What are we here to achieve? What do each of us want from the other person, and what can we each bring to the relationship? You might want to discuss some of the practical things like how often you're going to meet, both at the beginning and further on in the relationship, how you're going to contact each other in between the sessions, where you're going to meet and how long the meetings are going to last for, and also how the meetings are going to be structured. As part of the process, you're going to enter into an agreement with the coachee or mentee, and some of the other things that you might want to discuss are how you're going to review progress. You might want to also cover confidentiality, because obviously that's really important in a coaching and mentoring relationship. It's also good to cover early on how you might deal with any difficulties, or even under what circumstances you might end a relationship. So it's really important to discuss those up front so that if they do arise, it is much easier to handle them. You might also want to discuss some of the practical activities as part of the coaching or mentoring relationship, such as whether you're going to do some live observations so that you can see your client in action, or whether they're going to be working on any kind of homework in between the sessions. And it might be also about thinking about the client keeping a journal or some reflections on their experiences in between the sessions, or even talking to them about using some psychometric tests or other assessment tools as part of the relationship. As part of the contracting stage, you might want to agree how you're going to actually review the effectiveness of the coaching or mentoring. Here are some of the suggestions and areas that you might want to seek feedback on at the end of a coaching or mentoring session. So you might want to ask the clients, was the content relevant? How well did we deal with and use our skills and styles? How did we get on a personal level? Were there any difficult issues? Is there a clear aim emerging for the client? Is the coaching and mentoring resulting in alternatives for the client? Are some of the ideas actually being turned into appropriate actions? And is the client actually doing things for themselves to work towards their goal? A really simple tool that you could use to encourage accountability in your clients is to use a start, stop and continue. So just asking them at the end of the session, what will you stop doing, what are you going to start doing, and what might you continue doing as a result of the session? It might be a good idea to keep a written record of the contract so that there's no misunderstandings. But just be really mindful of how you're going to do this so that it's in line with data protection regulations. So who's going to actually store this? Where's it going to be recorded and how? Here are some of the things that you might want to include on a template. So obviously the names of both parties, the length of the program and start dates. But then you also might want to include the objectives, anticipated outcomes, and how you're going to measure success and how it's going to be captured. Try to make the anticipated outcomes as specific as possible. When considering the goals, thinking about how they're going to actually help the person achieve what they want to achieve, and also how do they align with overarching business goals. You need to be mindful that the success measures can be actually measured. So are there any KPIs that you might use? Could you use a pre and post 360 feedback tool or something like that to measure improvements? In terms of answering the question, how will this be captured, you need to think about who's going to be responsible for capturing the data or information, who's going to be responsible for measuring the success and documenting it. How are you going to be sure that you're going to capture any unanticipated outcomes as well? As well as using a template that you've prepared to agree the contracts, you might also want to consider sharing the Global Code of Ethics. The Global Code of Ethics is a professional code of conduct by which various coaching and mentoring bodies adhere to. It regulates the professional practice of all members, and it's the code of their professional responsibility. It's a guidance document rather than a legally binding one, and it spells out what a member can or cannot do. It sets out the expectations for best practice in coaching and mentoring and supervision, and promotes the development of professional excellence. So the purpose of it really is to set out guidelines for how members are expected to act. And it serves as a guide for those who might not also identify themselves as a professional coach or mentor, but actually are using some coaching and mentoring skills in their work. Some of the other things that the Code of Ethics covers are things around equality and diversity and how you might end a professional relationship. It also covers confidentiality and issues around supervision, and also how to deal with complaints and continuing professional development. So hopefully you found this a useful introduction to contracting. So just a few reminders. Contracting is really important and it's the key to a successful coaching and mentoring relationship. It really helps any issues being raised in the future and any problems occurring. Don't forget, a chemistry meeting might be a really helpful way of getting to know a client before you start to work with them, just to ensure that you can both work together and that your styles match one another. And contracting can be really helpful at the start so that you can set really clear goals that you can measure as you go along. And it's really important to document the contract just to make it really clear. But if you are going to do this, don't forget the regulations around storing data. And it's really helpful also to support the contract with the Code of Conduct, and you can find a copy of the Code of Conduct online easily. So just like to end the session with wishing you good luck with your contracting. Here are a few useful references that you might want to refer to. The Global Code of Ethics, as I said, is available online, and if you go to www.globalcodeofethics.org, you'll be able to find the full details. And there's a couple of other books that you might find useful. So the Coaching and Mentoring Workbook by Connor and Bakora, and also our very own handbook, our Boo Coaching and Consulting, Coaching and Mentoring Handbook, has some details on contracting. Thanks very much for listening.